Okay, I think I have it sorted out this time. Sorry, I had to restart the video. The audio wasn't working. And the issue is Firefox. If I use Firefox to do StreamYard, the audio doesn't work. So I shot over to Chrome. It seems to be working now. If it's not, please hit the comments. Tell me. There we go. All right, Rich, you check back in. It's great to see you, man. So like I was saying in the other video, and every Friday or, really every day, I try to do all my hardest work at the very beginning of the day so I can look forward to designing. And I'm just now at 3:36 Central Time getting around to working on some East Coast modified graphics. So I'm going to be discussing some design philosophy, color theory, just kind of going through some of the ways that I think while I'm designing. So I hope you find it helpful. And if you have any questions while I'm going along, just hit me up in the comments. I'll do my best to try to pay attention to both screens so I can answer your questions. So I did just recently update this East Coast modified template. I'm going to be doing all of these like this now, where when you save it here on the panels, it automatically will update over here on the live template. So you're not going back and forth and designing, for full size and then having to slide it into a template. Just takes a lot of time to do that. So design on full size and then have your presentation template auto update. I'm going to be working with a new number set that I have not released yet, but it's coming out really soon. Adam created it. And you're about to see a lot of cars with the number 4 or 41, because all of the number sets, the next 10 number sets that we come out with are going to be number sets 40 through 49. Or no, it's 41 through 49. And then all of the racing graphics that we're coming out with, the singles, are also 140 through 149. So, and I always typically number the cars, whatever number graphic that I'm creating with. So with this one, we're creating graphic, let's see, 141. So I'm just going to take the 4 and the 1. I'm going to bring them over to my design panels and size them up. And right now I'm just going to, I'm not going to be really specific in my sizing. I'm just going to kind of slide things in and rough it in for now. And then I'll get more specific. Typically I do that at the end. I just get all my elements in, make sure I like what I'm seeing. And then at the end, I kind of get all my margins right and all my increments correct, where my soft space and my safe zone and all that kind of stuff. All right, so I'm going to take this 41 here. If you've never designed an East Coast modified, they're a little bit different than, well, they're a lot different really than IMCA modified or UMP modifieds or even dirt light models, because they, the doors are so tall on them, but they have like a bar like that extends past the car. You can see here that your number, you typically don't want it to go down past. So you got kind of like a really large canvas though to work with. So I'm just going to, actually, I'm going to take my 41. I'm just going to set this one over here. I always like to have a backup. And I'm going to skew, I typically do between 25 and 35, depending on the number, if it's a single digit or a double digit. So I'm going to start with 35 here. One thing I don't do is I won't skew something and then start stretching it, because then you lose your skew increment. You don't know what your skew is at. It goes to a random number. So I don't like how that looks. So I'm just going to widen it out a little bit and shear it again. And we'll go 35. And sometimes if it's too, like if it looks too skewed, you just bring it down, bring it back 5, so let's try 30. And I'm never opposed to, coming back and sizing things down again later. So I'm just going to hit save, just make sure our template's working correctly. Come back over here and this will auto update. Now this one, I have it set up with TO, the TO window, Bicknell, the old Bicknell, the HigFab. So they're all set up in there and all of them are live updating. So this template takes a little bit longer. So if you have this template and you're using the auto update feature, I just suggest, once you know what car you're working on, delete the other sale panels out, so all those auto updates aren't happening with every single time you hit save, if that makes sense. So one thing I like to do is I like to establish my styles and how I'm going to use them. And I always use the graphic styles panel. I used to always just go object, path, offset, path. And I learned that's just it's a little bit more of a destructive workflow, where if you use the appearance panel, it works out a lot better. So I'm going to be doing kind of a blue, orange, black and white car, some pretty basic, safe colors. So everything should pop off once I'm done. I'm going to just stick with the white number kind of look, and then we'll mess with some graphics here at the end. Always starting with my graphics first. So I'm going to add the fills that I need. I know that I'm going to want probably something orange or something blue. And I'm always using global colors as well. So you can see the little white tab there in the swatch. And then that's selected right there. I'll just back this down just a little bit. So it's a little more orange, a little less red. And I'll just call it orange for now. And I like them to be global because then I can come back and adjust them later. If I want to print a little bit more saturated or do something like that, I can come back and just update the global swatch, and it just updates all across all of the art. Okay, so now that I got that there, I'm going to offset the path of this guy. You just do this by going down to the effects in your window from appearance, and you go to path, offset path. And my Illustrator's been acting weird lately, like it's giving me increments and then not, and then when I hit OK, it changes the increment. I don't know if I got to update my Illustrator, if my computer's like dying, or what exactly is going on. Do that. I always typically turn that up to 100, my miter limit. And then I'm just going to do this, and then I'll explain to you why I do it the way that I do it afterwards. Yeah, see, I typed in 125 and now it's 001. It's a great time. And then I'm going to try something with like a dark blue. So we'll do that. Effect, path, offset path. And you can see there, it's filling in. So if I was to pull it down, you can see now I have my orange and my blue, but I typically like my gaps between my numbers to be consistent. So like you can see the gap between the top of the 1 here and the 4. So I want to fill that space in typically with whatever my thickest outline is. And then I want it to be consistent all the way around. So I'll show you one of the mistakes a lot of designers make that creates a consistency issue. So I'm going to go ahead and just double it up, see how that goes. Got to make sure it's selected. Oh, see, there we go again. Like that. So you can see that gap there, still pretty thick, a little bit thicker than what's on the outside. So I'm just going to keep going. Got to make sure it's selected. Keep making that mistake. And, you know, one of the things, you know, a lot of times, one of the things that, you know, I typically do, like in my portfolio cars, like the ones that land on my website, they're typically like really refined. Like I've really gone through them and like made micro adjustments to them until I got them exactly where I wanted them. I'm not going to like do all of that in this video because you would sit here and watch me like nudging pixels around. And that's just typically not like a great use of time. So a lot of this is just kind of like roughing it in and seeing how things look. And once I get it exactly where I want it, I'll put it into the portfolio and I'll move things around and nudge things around and things like that. So that looks pretty consistent there. Probably could go a little bit thicker. But what that does is it just creates a ton of separation between what I'm going to put in the background and then what I have as the actual number. I'm trying to draw attention into the number. So I'll bring that up there for now, put that in, and I've already got these kind of pre-made, so I'm just going to slide them in over here. The other nice thing about this template and the way that it's set up is that there is no rake on this file, and then the rake is already accounted for here on this file. So I'm not like designing and then figuring out, is it, you know, 1.5 degrees or 1.3 degrees or whatever. It's already done here. So all I have to do is just design like it's going to go to print. I'll probably have to make some micro adjustments to this before it's printed, but I won't have to do all the twisting and tweaking to get it to fit into this template here. So do that. And I'll probably make a lot more updates to the number set or to the number before it's all said and done. But what I like to do is, part of one of my philosophies is you get all your numbers, all your sponsors, and everything into place first, and then you can kind of start determining like where your graphics are going to land, what's going to make them look best. You don't want to dictate where everything goes based on your graphic. You want the graphic to kind of supplement what you've already established as the foundation of the wrap design. So, what's most important are your sponsors and numbers. So you get them in a really good spot. And then once that's established, you add your graphic in. So another thing that I'm going to be adding to the website soon is sponsor template pack 5. So these are just make things a lot faster with basically designing anything. You can just come in here and grab these. They're already live type. The fonts are included. And then you could just slide them over to a car and then retype them to say really basically whatever you want. So I've really been liking this slate logo because it could be used in many different ways for many different things. So I'm going to bring that over. And I'm going to turn it white. That. And I'll eventually get it over to a global color, but right now I'm just trying to get it to a spot that's visible. So. And I always add these in, like, so that they're not finalized. And then, if you're you can choose whether or not to knock that out like that. Okay. So we can go, I can change this to Sullivan spelled with 2 L's. I think it's spelled with 2 L's. Can't tell. Let me look really quick. I'm a graphic designer, not a college English graduate. Yeah, so that looks right. Okay, so and I'm just making up a plumbing name. So Sullivan Plumbing Inc. And I'll move these over here. Now these cars, they really like to have big sponsors on them because of how big the panels are. So like the more space you could take up. So I could even bring this up here and size it down a little bit, something like that. I'm going to move this Klotz logo here. I always like to take up as much real estate as I want. We call it billboarding. You billboard the logo, right? Just make it as big as you can. I'd probably fix the kerning issues here. So I'm going to go ahead and create outlines, and then kind of bring this in just by eye. But you can kind of see the kerning between the V and the A was pretty substantial. I'll probably bring these guys in too. Okay. Like that and like that. Now, what's neat is you could take your original style that you created. So on this 41, I just did this blue, orange, and white, and I can just size it down as long as scale, style, strokes, and effects is turned on, which you can see right here. I have it checked. Okay, you can do that in your transform panel. You just go to the hamburger menu, go to scale, strokes, and effects, and then whenever you size something down, all the styles goes with it. So now if I was to do the opposite, so I'd just do that really quick. You can see as I scale it down, the stroke stays really fat and it's getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And that's not necessarily helpful in this particular instance. So I want to scale, stroke, and effects, then scale this down like that. Okay, so something that's going to be comparable to this sponsor here. And then I'm going to just drag and drop it over into my graphic styles window. So drag and drop. And now I select Sullivan and click it on there. And now the scaled down styles are on the Sullivan text. One thing that I like to pay attention to is if my outlines being consistent in color, but also in width. So if I'm going to put one more outline on this 41, I might put another outline on the Sullivan and make sure that they're both, even if it's a micro width, like let's say 1/8 of an inch, that they're both the same, just to bring consistency throughout the design. Now, another thing you could do that's really cool in Illustrator is you can stack your style. So you can have a style embedded within a style. It gets a little bit complicated, but once you do it a couple of times, kind of makes sense. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to clear the style off of this. And let's say appearance, clear appearance. And come on. There we go. Like that. So let's say I group these two together like this. Okay. And you can see it's got a group here. And I want that group to have the white fill on it. But then because it's grouped together, I can take and add that style to it like this. Okay. And so we'll go back to the appearance here. But it's only showing the outline of the blue, and that's because the group is on top of it. So I'll go back to appearance. And then I can come in here and I can say, no, I want to add another thing. So new fill. And I only want to add it to the Sullivan. And so the Sullivan's now red, which I wouldn't do that, but you can kind of see what I'm saying here. And then, but the whole group has received the blue, even though the Sullivan is red. So you can apply styles to groups is really the point I'm trying to make there. So in this particular instance, I don't like the plumbing ink. It's got like, it's small. So it's like, I don't want to like add another outline to it and complicate things and make it harder to read. 1 second here. And make it harder to read. So I'm just gonna, I want to leave that, but I do want to add the orange to the Sullivan here. So I'm gonna, let's see, stroke, and I'll make it orange like this. And I'm gonna go 2 for now. That, and I'm gonna set that stroke to, I wanted to set it to the inside, but it doesn't let me. Okay, so now we have pretty good setup there. And then as I go and I start filling in my graphics, I'll start filling in those little spots like between the L and the U in plumbing and the 4 and the 1 like that. Those little squares, they just kind of make things a little bit harder to digest within the design. And so in my mind, there's just not really a reason to have them there. Some designs call for it, but most of the time you can just ditch it and plug it up. So I'll do that after I start getting some of the graphics put into place. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Yeah, Richard, so you're a photographer by trade. Yep, I've heard of Dirtman Photography. I know I've seen, I believe you've ordered a few things, right? Through the store. So I'm going to click yes. And so I just made a mistake. So sometimes you want to design, when you hit save on these auto update templates, you want to come over to the template and let that and click yes on the updates, because sometimes it'll make it so that it will want to update every single link, and you don't want to let it do that, because if it does that, you'll be sitting here clicking yes 40 times because it's the body panels are linked in quite a few times. All right, so I'm going to go back over here, and I'm already seeing some things. So I'm going to go shear. I'm going to undo that, size this up, and bring it back. And we'll do that like that. Okay, and I'm going to shear this. I think it's going to be about 5 more degrees. Check it. Let's see here. That, yeah, see now that kind of matches. And that looks nice. You don't always have that luxury, but when you do, take advantage of it. Okay. That, now I'm going to grab another one. These guys, and I'm not going to change this one. I'm going to leave it as is. We'll bring it in. And nope. Like that. But this could be changed. You could change it to anything. It could be Ron's fishing lures. It could be anything. You know, you could even change this T here. So, you know, to an R, whatever. Change it however you want. and then it becomes just a quick and easy sponsor to recreate. Okay, so now pretty happy with that. Sometimes you would run another sponsor up here, but if you look over here at the template, you'll see there's, all that space up on that sail panel typically calls for, another sponsor or something if it can be afforded to be up there. So I like filling in space as much as I can. Sometimes you can't, just depending on what's available with each project. So maybe we'll get that Klotz logo and bring it back in there like that. We'll size it up a little bit more later. So, and I'm not sold on this part of the logo, like having it. A lot of times though, you won't be able to make that decision based on your client. They're going to say you have to have it. And so you either got to cram it in, fit it somewhere. But those kind of things, they can muck up your design and start making them look a little bit too busy. And so the other thing about these cars too that I like to do is putting the sponsor right on the seam. A little bit harder for the wrap installer because now he's got to line up work. He's got to be a little bit more particular. But when you have it on the seam, it sometimes allows you to billboard just a little bit more and get a little bit more space and breathing room for the sponsor, which draws more attention to it. So we'll let it do its thing here. And see that in this particular instance, it doesn't work, but like a big oval logo or something like that, it would work and it look really nice. So I'm going to bring that down. And I'll bring this one down for a little bit. And we may come back and make some more adjustments. Oh, I thought I got that text there. Guess I didn't. There we go. I'm just going to change the color of that so I can just kind of clearly see my boundaries here, what they are. Like that. And with most dirt cars, the right side is always a little shorter than the left side as far as how far the fenders go down. So you can see I'm already like squeezing this in at a smaller. It's got a lot less space. That's a general rule on dirt cars is keeping all your sponsors about 1 inch off the top. Again, I'll go through this design at the end, and I'll make sure everything is actually correct. I'm eyeballing it right now, but you can go back through and correct all that later. And one thing I like to do too is I typically like to skew things on the right side of the card just a little bit less because something looks a little bit strange about it when it's skewed the opposite direction. I don't know if it's just my eye, but I always feel like 5 degrees less is actually a little bit better one on the other side of the car. I'm not going to do that now, but just a kind of a design tip. And I'm just sliding these guys in because it's easy. And a lot of times you see these cars and they have, you know, the nose number, and sometimes it's straight up and down, sometimes it's skewed. I find the straight up and down ones fit a little bit better than trying to skew a number in this kind of like weird triangle shape, but I'll go ahead and do it this way. But you can see it's kind of like it leans heavy one direction for the shape. And so like I like to typically balance it out. And so it's just got a little bit more of a, you know, the skew on it is less. So I will shear it like that and then just let it sit in there as one kind of more of a rectangular piece. But I see it a lot of times, or I see them where they do this, they bring them in and then they kind of angle them a little bit. I guess it all probably comes down to preference and different methods to different people's madness. Now, one thing to remember about Illustrator, a good tip, is anytime you want to repeat the last step is just Command D. So if you like move something, like let's say we move something, like take this guy for instance, and then you move it, and like then you just hit Command D, and it'll keep doing that. It'll duplicate and move it like that. That's just a good thing to remember if you're like rotating objects. So like if I'm going to rotate 90 and then I select this one and I can rotate it 90. The issue is it does weird things and moves it. So, but it did rotate at 90 and I could just slide it in. So just remember that there's almost everything in Illustrator you could do that with. Once you do it once, as long as it's the next thing you do is the same exact thing, you just hit Command D or Control D if you're on a Windows. Alrighty, and let's see. I'm gonna take this guy. Bring that up there like that. And let's go take a look at it. Give it a second. Now remember, it's updating all of those different window panels, right, for every single chassis maker. And so you can see like I can get a lot more out of this left hand. So these are kind of a rough estimate. Let's see, what do I have turned on right now? So we got left side panels, but if I want the, let's see, TO, here they are. So there's the TO ones. I had them turned off. So I'm going to turn the TO ones on. Turn them that color, and we're gonna bring those down to, I'll just bring them to the bottom for now. I know it's kind of sloppy, but that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna turn them orange just so I can see exactly how they're gonna line up. That doesn't look like the TO ones. That's the other ones. There we go, hide those. And I'm gonna get rid of that. All right. And do that. And so this is a question people have asked me in the past, is like, how do you get your cars, you know, to look so good before you've even got graphics on them? And to me, they look okay. It looks okay, but it is that I'm solely focused on that. I'm not focused on oh no, where are my graphics going to be? How am I going to land them in the right spot and all that kind of stuff. I'm completely focused on, I just want to make sure my numbers and sponsors look solid, that they're readable, that they're in the right spot, and that everything is lining up according to the top of the door. So that's kind of where my mind is at right now. And when you get that, that's half the battle. And so any beginner designer that's starting with graphics, I just want to challenge you, don't do that. Start with sponsors and numbers. Get your car built out so that you kind of know where your empty spaces are and what you're going to have to work with. So when you start building your graphic, you kind of know, okay, I can get it to land here. I can, move this there. It just gives you a clear picture of what it is that you're actually going to be doing. All right, so I'm gonna go back. So one thing I saw there when I was looking at that is I could take this Sullivan and I could get it way up there, just really billboard it. My preference as a designer, the bigger things are and the more they stand out, the better. That's just how I'm always thinking. I'm like, how big can I get it? How big can I get the sponsor to be? And not always does it work out in your favor, depending on the text and the sponsor and all that. But a lot of the time, the bigger you can get it, the more the car is going to stand out. So I'm typically always thinking that way, especially with sponsors. It's hard to get them squeezed in on this side of the door or on this side of the car because of how little the space is. Because these cars, I don't know if you've ever watched them, but they lean over really hard coming out of the corners. A lot like dirt late models, dirt modifieds, they all kind of do that. They lean over really, really hard. So one thing too, I always keep in mind, I know my numbers in my mind. So when I skewed that 30 degrees earlier, I'm like, well, if I want to undo that, I know my base number is 30. So I can come back and move things around and shift things and then just undo it with 30, right? So I can get basically back to zero, which is what I just did there. And so just try not to do random numbers. Don't do like 27.3 because you're going to forget that. I always work in increments of 5, 25, 30, 35, like that. 25 is pretty base for skewing numbers and things like that. But, just always keep it in your mind. How if I need to get back to base, how can I do that? And that's why it's so important to work on the cars too, when they're not, there's no rake in them, right? We're working off that top line of the door in the quarter, and it's a perfect 90. So when you're working that way, you always know, oh, I didn't transform it, like I didn't twist it at all and then skew it, because now there's no way you're going to figure your numbers out unless you're incredibly good at math and you memorized everything you did. So just always keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to hit save. Get pretty comfortable with this. This 49 was 41. Go like that. And take this guy. I really like this logo here. See, remember what I said at the beginning of the video? So now it's going to make me like do that for every single link because I hit save and then I stayed in this document. So, and really what's happening is that the presentation template just recognizes how many times I have the file linked. And it's asking me to click to agree to update it for every single one of them. I'm just going to change the color to this really quick. Okay, so now we got that like that, and that like that for both sides. do this. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead, hit save. All right, now I'm going to start thinking more about my graphics and where they're going to be on the car and how that's all going to look. I already had a graphic in mind when I started, but I'm not sold on it being the final idea. I made it into next week's video. Not sure what you mean there, Simplicity Designs, but I'm with you. I'm glad you commented. Appreciate it, buddy. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that. And so now I'm going to go ahead and grab my graphic. This is a graphic that's going to be coming out on the site. I've just started it, so there's going to be obviously way more to it than this, but this is a good start. So I'm going to bring this guy. Yeah, let's do this. See a little noise piece there. And I'll ditch this piece here for now. And typically whenever I'm first starting out, I will abuse a graphic pretty hard, stretch it, move it, and then I'll come back and refine it and fix it, make sure my stroke widths are consistent, just clean things up. I'm not so much overly committed to something amazing at the moment, but I just want to know, is this general shape going to work for this car? So bring it in, and we'll just slide that in there like that. And I'm going to slide it to the back. Boop, like that. And let's see. I'm going to turn on my line so I can kind of see what I'm working with here. Like that. And oh, I see. That makes sense. Now I'm tracking with you. Your video in for next week. Yep. Hey, Circus Freak. I'm not exactly sure who you are, but appreciate you commenting. Thanks, buddy. All right, so I'm going to play with this graphic just a little bit here, and really, all the little shapes, the little lines and all that kind of stuff, that's pretty adjustable. Like, I'm not thinking that kind of stuff is that important right now, but I am focused on this orange, and I'm focused on this blue. If I can get those two things under control, then I know everything else is going to kind of work itself out when it comes to the smaller details. So I try to think of everything on that kind of smaller or the bigger scale first, and then go to the smaller. So right now the graphic is cut in a couple of different places in pretty kind of unhelpful ways. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, delete that out, and I can delete that guy out as well. Okay. And so now one of the things you can see, or one of the problems we could end up having, is you can see a straight line here, but then the bottom, there's so much of an angle, and it's like, well, how do we adjust for that? And so we've got to account for that for this car. So I'm going to take this guy here. And this is something, anytime there's a straight line graphic, you could just grab all the points that are in that one area and just treat them like a piston. It's kind of like a bit of a, it's straight up and down, left and right, whatever. Now I'm going to cut through it here, and this will allow me to make angles with it. Okay, so I'm going to make a clean cut so that I can adjust both and differently. So I'm going to delete that, and I can take that one down a little. Okay, you can see there. And if I can, I would prefer to trap that snap-on so that it's nice and trapped in that blue. Might not let me, depending on the, yeah, there we go. That looks better. Okay, I'm going to bring it down just a little. And the snap-on doesn't actually need the stroke. Anytime you don't need a stroke, I recommend not using one. Just kind of muddies the waters up. A lot of times strokes are just made for having the your graphics separate from your text. So you don't need it. It's just nice to have it. Okay. Bring that down like that. See how this looks. And this is where the lasso tool comes in really handy. And so you can take the lasso tool and you can just isolate some points like this without selecting other things. And now I can grab my direct select tool and just make sure that it follows that area right there. And so now you can see, got that and that. So here's the mistake I made. I like how that looks, but that's not gonna follow on the back. So, and this is what a lot of design is you're just experimenting. Like, hey, what's gonna work? What's not gonna work? You gotta be willing to do things wrong a whole bunch of times. Like, I'm willing to look at something not look right for quite a while before I make a decision that, okay, I'm not committed to this idea anymore. So you got to get to that uncomfortable space where, you're designing and, I don't like it, but I like the idea enough to keep massaging it in. And so that's, kind of where I'm at right now with this design. So I'm going to hit no, hit save, come back. Give it a second here. So yeah, there's a lot of empty space there underneath the 41 that I don't necessarily appreciate. So I got a couple options here. I like kind of the orange plastic, but then there's a blue line between the orange plastic and the orange graphic, which just kind of muddies it up a little bit, creates some unnecessary scenarios. And so I think I want to move that around a little bit. And so that's what I mean too about putting something in and then allowing yourself to not love it long enough to decide what are your other options with it. So I'm really kind of liking that. I like that this point got revealed, and I like that this kind of works with that. We could get boring and make this follow that 41. So maybe back it off 5 degrees. That gets a little bit predictable, which is okay. Sometimes some designs have to look that way. Sometimes they don't. I don't like it. I don't like having a graphic that, see how I'm hitting the Command D and it's continuing to go 5 degrees for me until I get it where I want it. So I could just keep doing that, Command D. Okay. And that's Control Z, undoing it. But see, it's kind of nice that it follows it, but I don't know for this design it has to. But when the lines are so close, like when we're talking about 2 to 3 degrees off, it actually ends up looking like a mistake because then it just looks like 2 lines next to each other, and we got sloppy with the second one, right? And so either go radical and go way, way out from what it was, or commit to going to the same, right? So I am thinking primarily about this spot right here, right now. And, maybe get rid of this. And then maybe move this up a little. Just kind of see how that looks. No, I liked it better. Like that. Okay. And, we can actually get rid of that for now, because really we just need these basic graphics. We don't need anything else that's complicated. Just the basic graphics. Oops, I did it again. So I can wait just a second. Oh, it's Joe. Hey, Joe, how you doing, man? It's good to see you. Yep, trial by fire, man. A lot of designers have the wrong idea. They think like you just come in and you have to design excellence right away. No, you just don't ever show people when you do stuff that's not right. That's what I do. I don't typically post stuff that isn't that I hadn't refined it quite a bit. And then you go back to your portfolio from like a year ago and you're like, what the heck was I doing? You see stuff that looks not really that great. But yeah, design is always trial by fire. You're experimenting, and good experimenters end up with more results because you just keep playing with things until they look exactly right. So another thing too, I'd say, for designers, Joe could probably attest to this, is you sit here and you're staring at a thing for so long, and it's like your brain just can't see it, whatever it is, whatever the problem is, it just can't see it. So you walk away, you get a cup of coffee or take a leak or whatever you got to do, and you come back, and the moment you look at your screen, you're like, there's the problem. It's like your brain got that little mental break, and you can just see what was so really obvious, but you're just too used to looking at it. And so I'm always thinking, with these graphics, just base shapes. So like really, I'm really primarily focused on this. I can recreate this thing easy. I can recreate this easy. Like once I get these two kind of where I want them, these ideas are just supplemental, right? So it's really more about what is my base structure. And maybe it's muddying up the waters right now, making it a little harder to see. So another thing that I would do, I have a really dark blue on the 41. I got kind of a lighter blue on the graphic, and then I got a really light blue outlining the graphic. And so now just thinking this through, how do I bring my graphic colors into my numbers so that they don't look completely isolated? Because right now they look isolated. So I can put a small outline on the 41 that's the light blue color. I could put an inset blue on the 41, or I can change the dark blue to the darker blue of the graphic. So there's a lot of ways you begin to experiment, or I could just turn the dark blue on the 41 black and let it kind of knock to base. And typically I'll say it's always that simpler is better. So I see a lot of guys, they overcomplicate what it is that they're doing because they're like, think of it like a Christmas tree. If I just keep adding stuff, it's just going to look amazing at the end. And sometimes that is the case. There's designs that call for that. But a lot of times it's like, how can I get the best result in the simplest way possible? And designs call for that as well. And mostly you're thinking about that with your sponsors and numbers, and not as much. I'm sorry, I'd say it differently. You're going to have graphics that are going to lend themselves to a really busy design, like lots of shadows, textures, things like that. And that's fun. I love doing that. But you got to be able to have in your tool belt, I can do basic designs as well. I can like do, 1, 2, 3 colors and have a design look really excellent and fast and like ready to hit the track. And it's not like, that's so simple, it doesn't look good. A guy who achieves that really well is Blackbeard. I know you guys probably all know who Blackbeard is. You can follow him on Instagram, and he has a lot of that just basic shapes on cars, but he understands layout so well that he can take a square and put it on a car. And why does that look good? And it's because he actually understands the philosophy, the contrast, and the layout process behind it. So I'm going to squeeze this down. One thing that's kind of cramping my style here is get rid of this. And those green outlines, if those are throwing you off, those are just my guides that I keep as a mask over everything, so that I kind of have a better reference of what I'm looking at, where things are good, where I'm hitting my limitations. So I'm going to bring that back there. And then I'm going to bring this down. And I'm going to bring that back. And now you can see the graphics kind of coming together. So the one thing I'm struggling with as I'm working through this design is the graphics are in the background and they're nice. They make the car look fast, but the sponsors are covering them up so much that like you don't really see the point of the graphic or where is the graphic leading. And so I never want to sacrifice my sponsor for the sake of the graphic, but I do want the two things to work together. I don't want them to be like separate in color or in like it just looks like they belong on two different cars. I want it all to kind of look like it belongs together in one way or another. So I may size this down just a little bit, just to get a little bit more of the top of the graphic in. So you can kind of see where the point is landing. And same with that. I don't need to size this down so much as I need to. And now you'll see, I'm going to just experiment with something here. So we got this kind of middle regular blue color here. Okay. So I'll just take that and throw it here and just see what it looks like. And kind of looks okay. I mean, it would work, but it's not, I'm not jamming on that really. So what I might do is add another outline to this. And this one will just be kind of small. And I'll do it that light blue color. And like I call this like the plasticky design. Like it's pretty typical. It's predictable. Don't know how else to really say it, but it's like it's kind of like anybody can do that, and it'll work. But it doesn't necessarily. It doesn't really like. There's something about it it's kind of like when you see one font too many times. It's like okay, I've seen that like 100 times. It's that same with that kind of like that blocky style. So I'm always trying to think, okay, what's something different that I can do, but still get this to be implemented into the wrap. So there, I just changed it to the blue color of the graphic. So you'll see on a lot of my cars, I don't do that final really bright outline because honestly, I just want this white. I want that white to really stand out. Yeah, you needed to be here earlier, dude, because I was talking about that. We're going to fix it. I know, you're just giving me a hard time. So I don't typically do that at the beginning because fixing the holes in the numbers, that's what he was saying. Because if I come back and I adjust the number, then I got to adjust the holes. And there is a way, actually in Illustrator, it's where you can add more effects to it that make it so those holes fill automatically. But it's hit or miss, so I don't like to use it. But yeah, typically you just, take your pen tool, throw that on there like that. And oops. There it is. Like trying to identify my swatches here. Like that. And then you just knock those out. The same with this one here. But the only reason I'm not doing that is because if I come back and I change the size of my number or adjust it in some way, I don't want to have to sit there and like pick through those again. I want that to be like my final, kind of like my final step. So again, we're bringing our graphic into our numbers without sacrificing the readability. So this blue here is pretty bright, and I never mind getting my numbers in a way where there's a lot in them, as long as everything complements itself. So, like I'll show you a mistake that I see a lot that hopefully this will really help somebody. So if I was to take, duplicate our white, and then we're going to turn this dark blue, and then we're going to offset this again. We're going to double it from what it is. Okay, that to me, it's got all kinds of problems. And because it's doing a thing where it's going, first of all, blue is a passive color. So you got to know this about color theory. Blue is passive. So you can think of it this way. Warm colors are active, cold colors are passive. Warm colors naturally stand out to our eyes more. So your yellows, your reds, your oranges, your golds, those things are going to really pop off. Like that's what you're notice for anybody who's not colorblind, that is. And then your subdued colors like your purples, your slate grays, and your blues and things like that. Those are called passive colors. And so how you're using your color, you have to think active and passive. So I'm trying to get to my number, which is the white part. All right. That's how I'm thinking of how I'm building my strokes. I'm building it out so that everything lands on the number 41, stands out a lot, right? So having active colors next to the white on the one really helps it stand out. And so if I do a passive color, then an active color, then a passive color, I'm running into I call it a contrast sandwich, where it's essentially like dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. You never want to do that. You want to build to dark or build to light. And sometimes building to dark or light doesn't just mean hue and saturation. It could actually just be the color that you're choosing. So now the way you can get to using a passive color and then an active color, like passive being blue and an active color being orange, is that you use a different shade of the passive color so that it's getting closer to the white instead of further away. So right now, this right here is like I would just never do this. And no matter what the colors of the design are, I would never go black, red, black, or black, blue, black, or black, yellow, red, or something like that. It would always be, I'm building to the background and I'm building to the number. And so that's how you always have to think about it, because the point is to be able to read it. And a lot of guys, I think they're just putting strokes on their numbers because they think a stroke should go on the number. And it serves a functional purpose, and that is to knock out space to make it readable from a complex background. And so if you don't think of it that way, then you're just like, well, it's a race car. It should just have strokes on it, and it should just have outlines on it. And that's actually not the way that the designer needs to think. You got to think, how am I making the number presentable on this car in a way that really will stand out? Okay. So, and some guys will say, well, that's boring. And I say, man, you got to understand design philosophy, and you got to understand color theory. So to me, this starts to get into more of a pass mode. Even though we got a passive, active, passive, this passive color is getting closer to the value of white than the orange. So they look good together. They work together in a complementary way. But what I would do, because I like small details, is I wouldn't let it be so big. So I might come down to like 125, that, and just let it be like that. And maybe lighten that blue up even more so that it it's more like the white. So we're going to go up to 1.5. Nope. -1.5. You might hear my kids in the background. They just got home from school. They're unhinged. All right. And say, so this is starting to look more and more like these two things. They belong together. I might change my stroke width here on the graphic so that it matches closer to what I've got going on with my 41. But always just know this, as a designer, it's not random. It's not, just random outline, another outline, throw another one on it. It's not that. It should never just be random. It should, every outline should be thought through as part of the building process. So it's the same thing. If I had this black car, and let's say I was going to have black numbers, right? That'd be weird because it's a black car with black numbers, but it's doable. But that means somewhere along the way, I've got to build to a lighter color. So what am I going to do? I'm probably going to turn this white, right? And so now my 41 stands out again. But now my light blue color in the 41, it's got too much contrast. And so I might take it and turn it a dark gray color, because see how it's like it starts to naturally build out. It's like black, a little bit lighter. Then you got your active color, which is punchy, which is orange. And then you go straight to your white, which makes it super readable. So just always know, systematize how you're building your strokes and outlines. Otherwise, you're just shooting from the hip, and you're going to get random results sometimes and good results other times. All right, so that's my soapbox. So I'm going to go back to what I had here. I'm pretty good with this. One other thing I could experiment with is maybe turning this the light blue and then trying to turn this the orange color. And that looks a little bit like, again, it's a little bit, that's not my jam. So I think I'm going to stick with that. And we'll go with that for now. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out. And I don't mind that they're really small. I don't mind that those outlines are really small. But maybe what I need to do is take that blue color and just make it a little bit lighter. So because I'm introducing the blue, but I don't need it to dominate, right? And the other thing you could do too is you could feather your colors in so that things are softer and everything's not so harsh. That you're going outside of just the basic building blocks of the colors. So I could take this one and I could just take the blue and then fade it to, whoops, let's see, get back to this guy here. There we go. Go to blue and fade it to white. Turn up the opacity to 100. Oops. And I'm going to turn that to 90. And so now you can see it actually looks really nice, right? And now it looks like, hey, I've really thought this through. It's got a little bit more thought into it, right? So you're kind of like fade from that into the white, and it's subtle, but it's a really nice detail. Almost gives it a little bit of like a hand painted look. Now, I'm always thinking this way with my colors too. If I have blue, I don't just have blue. I have all the blues in the spectrum. If I have orange, I don't just have orange. I have all the oranges in the spectrum. So I want to work with them all to really help make things stand out, right? And so I've got this color orange, but maybe I want to also have something a little bit closer to yellow, but not quite yellow, right? And though the difference will be subtle, it'll be enough to add dynamic things into the wrap design. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing here. Pull this down here. And I'm going to pull this orange here. Let's give it a little bit of a sunset effect. And again, I'm going to go 90. And now you can see, right, it's starting to kind of work itself together, but I'm not sacrificing the readability of the number at all. Okay, so now I could definitely, I think I want the dark on top. Like that. So see, that looks pretty decent. Okay. And I could continue to play with it more, and just continue to mess with it. Yeah. Now, another thing that I will do is take this orange here, and I'm just going to put a drop shadow on it. And let's see. It's the end of the day, so my brain's starting to be done with the designing. Fine, let's do that. Now, I always turn my blur to 0, because as soon as you start introducing blur, it really bloats like the size of your file and your load times and every other thing. And so I don't like it to have any of that. And so I keep the blur down to 0 and just leave it there. Almost all my drop shadows are going to be harsh. And then I'm going to drop my opacity down to like 20. Try that. Just again, another subtle detail. Okay. So we're going to click OK. And now you can see we're just slowly building out our style and trying to make it work with the graphic. So now I could take this graphic here, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to duplicate my fill, and I'm going to get my gradient out of here, and I'm going to create a swatch with it. So I'm just going to select this, and then once it's over here, I could just drag and drop it here. And now I can put that fill on the back one and then offset this path. 9 inches. It's pretty harsh. Click OK. And I'm going to drag it to this guy here. So now you can see I'm starting to get those same vibes out of the graphic that I have in the number set, if that makes sense. Okay. And if I want it to be the same width, of course, I can dumb it down to, let's see, what was it, 0.05. Maybe it was more than that. Let's see here. So we got that dark blue, which I think is here. There it is. All right. So now I'm going to do this. So now you can see I'm starting to work that dark blue color here into, so things are starting to slowly come together. So you can kind of get the point of what I'm doing here. No, this is not for iRacing. I mean, yeah, you could do it for iRacing. That's the same process. So there shouldn't be any confusion related to this. So I'll try to help out the best I can. Primarily, you're going to see wrap designs. They're going to be in a vector format because they're large format printing, and the quality is just always going to be better than a bitmap. I say always better. There's reasons why, because you could scale it as big or as small as you want without losing quality. Where bitmap, which is more what iRacing is going to be, is like a Photoshop GIMP kind of a thing. And you could do both. So you could do the vector artwork for iRacing, or you could do bitmap for large format printing, but the standards they're just different. And so in large format printing, people are typically working in what I'm working right now, which is vector. And so you could totally just design an iRacing car with vector graphics. Vector platform is just going to be the most flexible, and honestly, it's just the easiest to use. All right. So I hope that answers your question. All right. So I'm going to come back to this graphic here. Just do that. Give it a second here to update. There we go. That's looking pretty good. You know, 4s are always, you know, like I like to design with 2s, 5s, 7s. And I always struggle. You get a 4 in the design and it's like, oh man, sometimes 4s look so clumsy. Sometimes they look really good. It just depends on the font. But I'm designing with 4s today. So that's just the route we're going. And I'm going to leave that number or that sponsor. I'm going to leave it to be, I'm going to leave it skewed that direction. So it's not following the 41 backwards, just kind of like honoring if that was a real logo, you know, then what, we wouldn't skew it back and forth, you know, unless they gave us permission to do that. So now I can come back and I'm going to offset the path and get a new shape out of this. And I'm going to go 1 inch, see what that does. No, not that much. Negative 0.5 inches. Okay. And you can see it just kind of brought those shapes back that I deleted earlier. And we could do that. That's a little bit, to me, that's a lot of contrast. Not saying you shouldn't do it. Just, you know, just be considerate of your design and how you're working. But I'm more likely to use this color here, which that is the color, so we're not doing that. Let's go with the dark one, like that. turn off my green outlines here. And so that's coming together pretty good. Orange is my favorite color, so I'm always going to be like pretty biased when it comes to the color orange. But if we wanted to change this to some different colors or play with it a little bit to see if we can get a little bit more, I don't know, different kind of vibe or feeling or result, we could do that. So I'm going to take this guy here. And always just, feel free to do this with your graphics. Just duplicate them and cut them and get them slid into certain places so that, you know what you're kind of working with. So I'll just group that together. But all I'm achieving is just duplicating that particular idea. So now on this, because I'm going to slide the graphic behind the snap-on, I do want there to be a stroke on it. And I'm basically to just knock to base. So always be thinking I'm knocking to base with a stroke. Even if your stroke has multiple strokes, your real goal is I'm knocking to base. Like, meaning I'm getting to where this thing is readable, right? And do that. Come back here. Give it a second to update. I always go out of the program and then come back in, and it seems to update a little bit faster. There we go. Okay, so now with this template, I'll just show you a couple things here. So I always try to set up my templates with like a lot of options. So there's the TO, I turned off that, but if I turn on the Troyer sales, still there's the graphics. Same with the old Bicknell, but as you see, I have to put the graphics in a different spot for that Bicknell because the sales and windows are in a different spot. Here's the new Bicknell. They go up higher. And then the old HIGFABs. And now the new one, which looks a lot like the old Bicknell. And then we even have the short track sales, which the reason you see gray off that is because I have to change the panels in this template, the colors, which I could do. I'm not going to do that now, or I could just add it to the graphic design or the panel file. Okay, so I'm going to turn the TOs back on and go back here. And so one thing that I could do, I'm going to kind of grab that. So I like how that orange looks at the bottom without breaking to the blue into the plastic, right? Kind of gives it a different kind of a contrast. No, I don't like that. Okay. And hit save. So this template, once, like if I deleted all those other sale panels out of here and windows out of here, then it would update a lot faster, but it's going through, like right now, the thing that it's doing is it's updating all of them, even though they're hidden. So I really like that. See how it kind of breaks down to the orange at the bottom and then it works its way up to blue at the top. And then I could even do, and again, like I said, I'm always experimenting. So just think of everything as an experiment and not final. Like, what final is because you'll be happy with it. Right? So I'm going to unlock this. And again, these are things, I don't know. Is this going to work? Is this going to look good? About to find out. More times than not, I'll do something and decide I don't like it and it doesn't look good. And but you have to be willing to, I don't know if vulnerability is the word. Just to be honest enough with yourself, like it's okay to suck for a second, okay? Hey, no problem. Almighty Chubb. I probably know your name, but I don't know who Almighty Chubb is. So, so it's that to me takes a little bit of the aggressiveness of the design away. So I think I don't prefer that. So I'll probably just ditch that. But I at least tried it to, figure out if I like it or not, right? So I'm going to go ahead and ditch that. And we're going to leave that how it is for now. And let's see here. Then I'll just start implementing this stuff into other parts of the design. And so I think it would be cool, actually, if we turned the top blue like that, and then let the rest of the cart be trapped by the black. I always like it when the deck is just a different color. I think it looks more killer. And so, I took all that time to build this style here. So now I'm just going to take this. Again, I showed you earlier. I'm going to size it down some. And I'm going to drag and drop it here. We're going to ungroup that. And then I will, you know what? I need to get that not a group. Right now, it needs to be a compound path. There we go. And there we go. And if I don't like exactly how it's scaled, just scale it down a little more. And then if you're really picky, which I typically am, you can go through and adjust your widths to be whatever, however you want them to be. There we go. So I don't need all that stuff to be around this little tagline. I like to keep that clean. So I'm going to take this, scale it down, throw it in there, pop that on there like that, and maybe do a little more. And then if you want to clean up your styles, your graphic styles, you just go to select unused, and it'll select all the ones you're not using, and you can delete them. And that keeps bloat out of your file. Okay. So then I can bring this up here, kind of stack it in there like that. And I don't know if I really like that result. Yeah, that's fine. I guess it's okay. I guess it's good. And all right, Tim Miller's in here calling out people. Now it just got real. The weekend is here. So, like I said earlier, I said this early on, is I want there to be some consistency between my 41 and my Sullivan, and I'm not going to do that by putting a huge fat outline on the Sullivan that wouldn't match the scale of the letters, but I will take this outline and make them match, because it just brings a level of consistency to the design that's makes it all kind of come together. And I'm doing a little bit of a guessing game right now. That looks pretty close. If I was being picky, I might say it's one less than that. That. And I always hate this too. See how this is kind of doing a thing here? So don't be afraid to adjust those. Just give it a little bit more. Make it look like you're being a little more intentional. Okay. Now, what's happening that I don't like is this orange here is going behind that graphic, and it's just a little sliver coming out. I don't really know that it's like helping anything or hurting anything, but it's kind of a little bit of a distraction how it's going between those numbers back there. And if it was a different design, maybe I wouldn't care at all. So maybe I'm just gonna give it a little bit of meat just so we all know, like, we're being intentional with that. It's not just accidentally landing somewhere with no thought behind it, right? Okay, so now we spent all that time on that graphic style. So let's do this. I can drop that, pull on this guy. There we go. But now we have to make sure that we're gonna do our drop shadow the opposite direction. So we're gonna find that drop shadow, and now I just gotta take the minus off of it. And now it's going the opposite way. And you could darken it up a little bit. I kind of did that pretty light, but I'm still okay with that. And then same with the Sullivan. And you can make some really quite complex graphic styles that really do bloat your files, depending on if you have like blur in them and things like that. And so I just say, like, just be careful, but definitely once you're done with a graphic style, get it deleted out, because some of them can really bloat your file in a way that's really unhelpful. And so you would think it's not a big deal, but like you'll save quite a bit of disk space by just getting rid of that stuff out of your Illustrator files. We're gonna that's a little too big. And that's one thing too. It is like things can start to look clumsy the more outlines you get on them. Like I don't know how I feel about all these little things happening. So am I gonna like refine that now? Because we're making a video, I'm not. I don't want to sit here and have you watch me do that. But those are things, like, don't take them for granted in your design. Like, think it through. If it can be cleaned up, clean it up. If it's going to make something more readable, like do it, fix it. And I just need a reference here. Okay. Hit save. Take a look. What do we got? Hey, no problem, TD. I'm always glad to give feedback. If sometimes I don't have time to go through all the cars, but I like doing it. So anytime you want feedback, you always feel free to pop a car in there, and I'll do my best to get to it and give you as much feedback as I can, as I have time for. Alrighty. That was something else I was going to show you. I just had it run through my mind, and now I can't remember what exactly it is. Oh yeah, playing with a texture, maybe getting a little bit of, I don't know, something different in here. So far I like the way that it's turning out. That blue at the bottom there is going to have to go. Come back to my body panels file. That. The funny thing about these East Coast modifieds too is, like, some of them are like skewed, like the numbers like have, like a 40% skew on them, or I say 40 degree skew on them. And so like a lot, especially like the single digit numbers, they're like really massive and there's a really large skew on it. And you know, and most of the time I would say like, don't do that. But in these particular cars, it just works. There's so much space, it just works. And so, you know, the more space there is, it just seems like you can really like pull a number pretty wide and then give it a big fat skew. And it makes it look nice and, I don't know, nice and thick and fast. So I kind of dig that. I think I might bring that 41 up just a little bit. That, and now I'm going to go to seamless background 8. So this is on the site. This is a new product I just launched with seamless backgrounds. And these to me are like, I mean, I like everything that I launch, but these to me are like the most valuable thing because they add such awesome details into the designs, and it doesn't have to look like, oh, like that's a raised graphic or anything like that. It's like, it's just so subtle and it just fills the design in so well. Just makes it look, you know, complete. It gives it a finishing touch. So I'm going to roll with this guy for a second here and just see how it'll look. And they are seamless, so it's a seamless background graphic here. You know, I just really kind of need like a little bit of a off, like a almost a gray. And then you just drag and drop them here into your swatches panel, and they'll fill any shape. So I'm just gonna do that, and then fill it, and send it to the back. Kind of see there, it's, and then you know, you can also turn it black, drop another one, and I can fill both of these appearance. So I'll take that and I'll turn it black, and then I'm just going to set that to like overlay, like that, and then turn it down a little bit. So it's there, but it's kind of subtle. I like subtlety. I'm not a big fan of like every single thing standing off a car. Same with this. I'm just going to kind of crank it down a little bit here. Like that. And that will increase your file size, and it will make it take a little bit longer to load into that template. So now I can take this guy and put it into there, and then just add it over here on this side. And I don't like to overdo it, like with my textures either. So like, you know, I didn't put it up here, but I did put it down there. I could put it up there and maybe that would make sense, but like you can even fill your numbers with it, but it's just, don't go overboard, you know, with that kind of stuff. So it's like, there it is in there, but now like tone it down. Right? Like bring it right down to 8% or something. And do the same thing here. And again, it's a big experiment. I'm not like 100% sold on this idea. I'm just doing it and then seeing how I like it, you know. Hit save. There we go. Yeah, so I don't really like it in the number, but I dig it. I think I dig it in the graphic. And that's pretty cool. And again, don't keep that stuff in your file because it'll just bloat it. And then also the same with your swatches, select all unused, and it'll select all the ones that are unused, especially patterns. Just delete them out so that they're not hanging out in there, bloating your file size. Yeah, the textures, Alan, they're cool. Like I love adding texture, but they got to be subtle in my mind. Like if I make the texture, if I overdo it and I fill everything with it, it's like I still have to determine the hierarchy of the design and like what should be the most prominent thing, and it's always going to be the numbers for me. So and the sponsors. So if I am sacrificing that for the sake of adding like a design element, I think I love my design element more than I should. And that's, pretty common among designers. And so just keep it in mind, like when you're designing, like what is the purpose of this? It does, everything does add an emotion and a feeling. And so you got to be aware of that. And that is good. But not everything is always necessary. And so, I grew up in the 80s. I was a kid, I was born in 1981. And so I like to design things that evoke the feeling of racing in the 1980s. Like that's just what I lean towards. So a lot of my design preferences like harken back to those days with like hand painted race cars and things like that. So just always, what is the thing that's like pushing your inspiration, and just like, try to push boundaries on it, but also try not to abandon it either. So something I just thought of that I thought would be cool is because we're going up to that blue there, and then we got this black down here. So what if I just took this and faded to black here? Eh, like that. Like that. And then did the same thing there. Kind of dig that because it gives it, kind of looks like it's coming out of that black area and draws less attention down to that spot with the bright blue. don't even know if I need that anymore. Kind of don't. So hit save on that. Probably should turn that graphic to the orange and then do these as the blue, and that would probably look better. But I think you get the basic idea. I could probably add more like to here, like more graphic stuff here and more here. And so, like take these, for instance. And so you can even see here, I'm like accidentally getting fun results just by switching that around and seeing the blue interact with the orange there. Miss Sullivan's probably cut off too much up in the wheel well, so I'd probably play with that some and make that not be the case. Just, now that I'm taking a second look at it, I kind of see it more as a problem than anything else. Then I would go through and I'd clean up all this extra stuff that we got here in the graphics and just make sure that it's, the design file's clean. I've got all these kind of things like laying around. I just get rid of that, get rid of this, keep your file nice and clean. Then probably, the fun thing you can do is that now, so you can always take your graphic like this. So let's take our graphics and our sponsors here. And you can say new color group, and you can just say used colors, and just make sure that your selected artwork is selected. I don't do that. Don't include that. Well, you can if you want to, but I don't. Okay, so now it has all my colors in here. And because I set up globally at the beginning, except for this one, whatever this is, I accidentally did something wrong here. So one of my colors is not global. But you can, I can come in here and I can hold down Option or Alt, drag and drop, and start turning some of those things different colors, and then turn, maybe inverse my orange and my blue. Like that. But I don't want to inverse that. So you just start seeing maybe some ideas take shape that maybe you wouldn't have saw before just by switching up the colors and playing with it. And so obviously there's a lot of different things you can do and play with it. And I'll go back to base here. I'm just going to save that. I say that probably for now is good. One thing that I would do is like experiment with red instead of orange, or maybe even green instead of orange, and just play with it. Because like let's say you're working for a paid customer, but you set everything up globally, it'll just give you other color ideas for other projects. Just sit there and just play with it for a second and kind of experiment and see how the colors could work together, perhaps differently. So I think that's pretty much it for today. This layout that I created here, this will be included in the graphic as 140. I think it's going to be 140 is this graphic. So there'll be 140 will be coming out, and then the layout will come with it. And honestly, it's going to be called an East Coast modified layout, but it can fit anything. You could put it on a dirt late model. You could put it on a modified. You can put it on a sprint car even if modified enough. And so never think of it as like if I post something that's like East Coast modified layout. It's like honestly, it could be slid into a lot of different templates. So appreciate you guys watching and tuning in, and it's fun to kind of go through this process. Usually I just sit here and design and think, and so I think it's better for me to talk through what it is I'm doing. And if you guys ever have any questions, just always feel free to hit me up on the support page. It's always me that answers. It's always me that is the one responding to support. I'm the one who creates most of the files on the site outside of the illustrations and some of the number packs that Adam creates and Brian creates. But basically, if you see something happening on the website, I'm the guy doing it. So just always feel free to reach out to me. I love talking to you guys, and I love helping you out as much as I can. So you guys have a good Friday and have a good rest of your day.